Today we're going to go over chapters 6, 7, and 8. Chapters 6, 7, and 8 are all very similar. Basically, we're doing the exact same thing. We're going to be working out proportions. So if chapter 5 proportions came easy to you, then chapter 6, 7, and 8 are going to come very, very easy to you as well. Basically, with these chapters, we're going to be working within different measurements in the metric system. The metric system is kind of the gold standard system of what we use in healthcare. And what you're going to do is basically take different measurements within the metric system and convert them to another measurement within the same system. It'll all make perfect sense when we get into it. What I have done for you, which will make your life a lot easier when you're working out these different problems in 6, 7, and 8, I have created a metric conversion guide. Now, you'll find that throughout all of the chapters, there's little boxes within the chapter that have an apothecary and household measurement conversion for you. And basically what I did is I went through and I took all of those different tables and I put them on one sheet. So you're not having to constantly flip back and forth in your book trying to find a different conversion. I will put this sheet in Blackboard under course documents. So that's where you'll go to access it. Just go to Blackboard, course documents, and then I will name it Metric Conversion Guide, and that's where you'll find it. So you'll want to print it off when you're working these problems because it'll be a lot easier for you. So basically, I'm just going to get started with Chapter 6. Chapter 6 is metric and household measurements. And basically, we have one measurement, and we want to identify what the equivalent that measurement is with another one. So, for example, number 6, and again, I'm getting these questions off of the worksheet in the textbook. These worksheet problems are not the same one that you have to do for me and hand in for a grade. These are problems from the worksheet in the textbook chapter. So chapter 6, worksheet number 2, has the problem of 5 milligrams equals how many micrograms. So what we have to do is set up a proportion so we can identify how many milligrams equals X micrograms. And so what you will do is you will get your guide, your conversion guide, and you will look up to see what is the conversion between a microgram and a milligram. And what I have found on here, what you'll find is 1,000 micrograms equals 1 milligram. And so that's how you will set up the left side of your proportion or the left side of your equation, is you will set it up with what is known. If you look on page 106 in your textbook says it best. On page 106 it says, on the left side of the proportion, place what you know to be an equivalent between micrograms and milligram. And I know that 1,000 micrograms equals 1 milligram. What you place on the right side of the equation or the proportion is what is unknown or what you want to identify. So here I want to know how many micrograms equals 5 milligrams. And so I set up my equation just like that. 1,000 micrograms is to 1 milligram, as X micrograms is to 5 milligrams. Another thing that I want to point out to you is you have to make sure that you set up both sides equally. So I have micrograms first over here. That means I have to have my microgram over here, listed first. And then I have milligrams. I could flip this problem completely around. I could have listed it 1 microgram equals 1 milligram equals 1,000 micrograms. That'd be perfectly fine. If I did that, I would want to make sure that I listed milligrams first and then micrograms. So make sure you always, both sides of the proportion match. You have the equivalents first and second match. So here I have micrograms, here I have micrograms, here I have milligrams, here I have milligrams. And then you can work it out. So this is my simple proportion. 1,000 micrograms is to 1 milligram as X micrograms is to 5 milligrams. So as you might remember through proportions, you're going to just multiply the outers and the inners, or the middle. So it's going to be 1,000 times 5 equals 1x. So as you can tell, I'm kind of dropping my labels as I work my math out, and then at the very end, you need to make sure that you put your label back in. So I'm dropping my labels. I'm bringing my 5 and my 1,000 and multiplying it together, and then I'm multiplying my 1 and my x together. So over here I have 5,000 equals, I can drop my 1x. So then you can just put your 5,000 up here. So 5 milligrams equals 5,000 micrograms. Now, this is a problem that you could probably much easier just work in your head. If 5 micrograms equals 1 milligram, then 5 milligrams, you're just going to take 5 times 1,000 and get your answer. But I want you to show your work because there's going to be many problems that aren't quite that easy, and you're going to have to work it out. So it's going to get it wrong if you don't show me your work. So here's my end result. 5 milligrams equals 5,000 micrograms. Now we'll move on. We'll do number 3 on that worksheet in Chapter 6. And this one is 2.5 grams equals how many micrograms? So again, I went to my little conversion guide, or in the book's conversion guide, and I know that the equivalence between grams and micrograms is 1 million. So 1 million micrograms equals 1 gram. And on my other proportion, on the other side of proportion, I'm trying to solve for micrograms. So x equals 2.5 grams. So that's how I've set it up. Now I'm just going to multiply like I need to, and this is going to be 1 million times 2.5 equals, and again, 1x. So let me do that math really quick. Actually, I have it written down here. That ends up being 25. So my answer is 2,500,000. So 2.5 grams equals 2,500,000 micrograms. I did that by setting up my proportion. I knew this is what is known. 1 million micrograms equals 1 gram. And so what is unknown is how many micrograms is in 2.5 grams. Now again, all you essentially have to do is take 2.5 and multiply it by 1 million, and you would end up with your answer. But again, I want you to show your work for these problems. So we took 1 million times 2.5. It was going to equal x, and here was our end result. Make sure you label your work as well. Put it up here to micrograms. 2.5 grams equals 2,500,000 micrograms. So now we'll do kilograms and grams, and this is number 6 in the worksheet from Chapter 6. I've got 6 kilograms equals how many grams? I've set up my equation or my proportion. I looked at the worksheet or looked it up in the book, and I know that 1 kilogram equals or is the same as 1,000 grams. That is what is known. What is unknown is how many grams 6 kilograms equals. So here's my equation. Noticing again that I have my kilograms listed first on each side of the proportion, and my grams are listed second on each side of the proportion. I could have switched my grams and kilograms on the left side. That would have been fine, but I would have to make sure I matched it on the right side. So let's set up our equation. So I'm going to take my kilograms and multiply it by my grams here. So basically it's 1x equals, multiplying these two here, 6,000 kilograms. And so then I know that x equals 6,000 grams. So 6 kilograms equals 6 grams. Again, you could very simply just know that you're going to, since 1 kilogram equals 1,000 grams, you could have just multiplied 1,000 by 6 and came up with your answer, but you got to show your work. So 6 grams or 6 kilograms equals 6 grams. The next one that we'll do is number 33 from the worksheet. And this is from the back side, I believe, of that worksheet. This is 3 inches equals how many centimeters? So again, I've set up my proportion already for you. I know what is known as 2.5 centimeters equals 1 inch. What is unknown is how many centimeters equals 3 inches. So we'll do our work. We're going to take our outer numbers and multiply them. So 2.5 times 3 equals, and then again, here's 1x. So when I do that math, and again, I have it written down here, 2.5 times 3, 7.5 equals 1x. And you can just take the 1 away and leave it as x. So your answer is 7.5. So 3 inches equals 7.5 centimeters. I set up my equation, my proportion. What I knew was 2.5 or 2.5 centimeters equaled 1 inch. And then the left or the right side of the equation is what was unknown. I wanted to know how many centimeters equaled 3 inches. So that's how I set up my equation. I multiplied my outer numbers together, and I multiplied my inner numbers together. So 2.5 or 2.5 times 3 is 7.5, and equaled 1x. We know we can just drop the 1, and it equals x. And then just plug in your number up here, 7.5 centimeters. And let's just do one more from this chapter. We'll do number 37. Here we have 1.5 cups equals how many mLs? So we want to know how many mLs is in 1.5 cups. I set up the left side of my equation with what I knew. I know that 240 mLs is 1 cup. What I don't know is how many mLs is in 1.5 cups. So here's my equation. Again, I'm going to multiply my two outer numbers, 240 times 1.5, and then this is going to be 1x. So when I do that, I come up with 360 equals 1x, or 360 would be my answer. So I can plug that up here. And now I know that 1.5 cups equals 360 mLs. Set up my proportion. Always on the left side, you're going to put what you know, and on the right side is what is unknown, making sure that however you set up your left side of equation, the right side matches. So on the left side, I listed mLs first. On the right side, I listed my mL first. Cup came second, cup came second. Then you just do your math. And again, when you're doing your math, you can drop the labels. It would get very confusing if you tried to keep those labels. So you're just going to take 240 times 1.5, and then 1 times x, and it equaled 360. Okay, so those are what I have for you with Chapter 6. Again, make sure this little conversion guide is going to be, a great help for you, so you're not having to flip back and forth pages to identify, okay, what is the equivalent that we know? It'll be all right here for you. So you can set up your equation on the left-hand side with what you know, and then put what is wanting to be known or what is unknown on the right side. So that's Chapter 6. I'm going to pause real quick, and then we'll come back and do Chapter 7. Okay, so we're going to move on to Chapter 7. Chapter 7 is apothecary and household measurements, which that really doesn't even matter. You're going to do the exact same thing that you did with Chapter 5 and the exact same thing you did with Chapter 6, where we actually start plugging in true equivalents. So in Chapter 7, I'm coming off of number 1 from the worksheet in the textbook, and it's 1.5 fluid ounces equals how many pints. So I've set up my equation, and again, on the left-hand side, I put into the proportion or the equation what was known. So I know that 16 fluid ounces equals 1 pint. What I don't know is how many pints 2.5 flowing ounces equals. So here's how I set up my equation. Now I'm just going to do the simple math, multiplying my outer numbers. So that's going to give me, and again, I'm dropping the labels when I do that. So over here is going to be 16x equals 1 times 2.5. Now, at this point, this number and turn it into an improper fraction. So in order to do that, you might remember that you take your whole number, you multiply it by your denominator, and then you add your numerator. So 2 times 2 is 4, plus 1 is 5. So this actually ends up being 5 halves. So when I end up with that, I'm going to have 16x equals 5 halves. I now need to divide 16 from both sides to, in order to bring that 16 over, I'm going to divide it. So this is going to be 5 halves divided by 16. I know when I'm dividing fractions, if I wanted to make things easier for myself, I can just take that second fraction and flip it upside down and then multiply straight across. So instead of dividing 16, I'm going to multiply 1/16. So it's going to be 5 halves times 1/16. So I just flipped that one. And now I can just multiply straight across. So this equals 5/32. And that's what I'll plug in up here, is 5/32. So 2.5 fluid ounces equals 5/32 pints. Okay, let's do another one. Number 2 from chapter 7. This problem is 15 fluid ounces, again, equals how many pints? So I've set up my equation just like I did with the last one. I know that 16 fluid ounces equals 1 pint. That's what's known. On the right side, I mimicked my left side as far as fluid ounces first, pints second. And I know the 15 fluid ounces. What I don't know is how many pints that equals. So here's how I set up my proportion. Now I'm going to do my math by multiplying my outer numbers and then my inners. So this ends up being 16x, again, equals 1 times 15 is 15. So I'm just going to divide 16 to both sides to get it over to the other one. So 16 divided by 16, and that ends up being my answer, 15/16. So 15 fluid ounces equals 15/16 of a pint. Now, number 3 might look a little bit intimidating, but it's really not. It basically is just 2 proportion equations in one. So it wants to know 4 pints equals how many fluid ounces, which equals how many quarts. So you're just going to do this first equation first, and whatever answer you get, you'll then plug in down here and do your second equation. So once we figure out how many fluid ounces are in 4 pints, then we'll figure out how many of those fluid ounces is in 1 quart. So just forget about this third equation for a second, and we're just going to focus on these 2 numbers here. How many fluid ounces are in 4 pints? So I've set up my equation. So I know that 16 fluid ounces are in 1 pint. What I don't know is how many fluid ounces are in 4 pints. So now I'm just going to do my math, multiplying my outer ones, which 16 times 4 is 64 equals X. So there's my answer right there. 16 times 4 is 64, and I know that 1 times X is just going to be X. So here's 64 up there. 4 pints equals 64 ounces. So now I want to know how many pints, let me get this right, how many pints equals 64 fluid ounces. So I'm just going to take that 64, drop it down here. Here's my next question, my next equation. 64 fluid ounces equals how many pints? Now we've got rid of this one. Now we want to know how many quarts does 64 fluid ounces equal? So I have it set up down here. Since I worked out this first part of the problem, I got my answer here, 64. Now I'm going to plug it in down here. 64 fluid ounces equals how many quarts? So I know what I know is 32 fluid ounces equals 1 quart. What I don't know is how many 64 equal. So I'm going to just do my math, or actually I'm going to put 64 in here. So this is how I set up my equation. What is known as 32 fluid ounces equals 1 quart. What I want to know is how many quarts 64 fluid ounces equals. That's an easier way of saying it. So I'm going to do my math, and it ends up with 32x equals 64. So now I'm going to divide this by 32, and 64 divided by 32 is 16, I believe. Is that right? Where's my calculator? Or 2, it's 2. 2. So there's your answer, then that would be plugged in up here. So 4 pints equals 64 fluid ounces, and 64 fluid ounces equals 2 quarts. It's a long way to just get those two numbers. Let's do another one, just make sure I did not completely confuse you. So let's do number 7. Number 7 is, we want to know how many gallons equals 3 quarts. And then when we come up with that number, we'll want to know how many of those gallons equals a pint. Again, we just basically have 2 problems in one here. So what we're going to work with first is this first half of it. 3 quarts equals how many gallons? What I know is that 4 quarts equals 1 gallon. And you'll notice I switched things around over here. That's perfectly fine. It doesn't matter what you do as long as your equation is set up equally. You have quarts listed first and gallons listed second, or however way. So now I'm just going to do my simple math of multiplying my outer numbers and then my inner numbers. So 3 times 1 is 3 equals 4x. So then I'm just going to divide 4 by both sides, which is going to equal that out, and this is 4. So I know that 3 quarts is 3/4 of a gallon. So now I have that first half done. Now I need to work on the second half. So the second half's question is 3/4 of a gallon equals how many pints? Well, what I know down here is that 8 pints equals 1 gallon. And again, I know that because I looked at my metric conversion guide, and that's what it told me. So that is what's known. 8 pints equals 1 gallon. What isn't known is how many gallons, how many pints equals 3/4 of a gallon. That's what's not known. So that's what we're going to have to figure out. So I'm going to plug in my 3/4 down here, which is my answer from up here. So once I came up with 3/4, now I can finish out the rest of this equation. So if 3/4 of a gallon equals how many pints? I'm going to do my math. I'm going to take my 8 and multiply it by my 3/4. And that's going to equal 1x. So do my math, first of all, with this equation. I know that I can reduce. I know that 4 will go into 8 2 times. And 2 times 3 is 6. So 6 equals x. So now I can put that up here. So ultimately, my final answer is 3 quarts equals 3/4 of a gallon, and 3/4 of a gallon equals 6 pints. That's your finished product or your final answer. So don't look at those types of problems and think, oh my gosh, what's going on? Just take it into 2 separate ones. First answer the first half, And then the answer you come up with, make sure you're plugging it in and using it with your second equation, and then you'll solve for the second question that you want to know. Okay, and let's do another one from that chapter. And this is number 4 on page 126. Just kind of the same thing. I have my equation. Here's my problem. 1 3/4 cup equals how many fluid ounces? So I'm going to set up the left side this time with what I know. I know that 8 ounces equals 1 cup. What I don't know is how many fluid ounces equals 1 3/4 cup. So we'll just do our math. First of all, before I get too much further, I'm going to take this mixed number and turn it into an improper fraction. So that's going to be 4, 5, 6, 7 fourths is what that's actually going to turn into. So we have 8 times 7 fourths. And it's going to equal 1x. So I know that I can reduce this. I know 4 will go into 8 2 times. Multiply straight across. 2 times 7 is 14 over 1, which is essentially just 14, equals x. So my answer is 1 3/4 cup equals 14 fluid ounces. Okay? So that's all the ones with Chapter 7 that I'll go over. Again, when you're working on these worksheets, if you come across any problems that stump you or you can't figure out how the book got the answer in the back, just text me or call me, email me, come in and see me, and I'll try my best to work it out for you. We're going to do some problems from Chapter 8 as well, but again, it's the exact same thing. You're going to use your metric conversion guides and identify what you know, and that's going to help you set up one side of the equation. Normally it's the left side, but like I showed you on that one problem, you can set it up on the right side. The key is making sure that you set your problem up to where you have the same measurement listed in the same place. So if I had pounds listed first on the left side, I need to make sure I have pounds listed first on the right side. That's the most important part. And then you just do your simple math of multiplying your outers and then multiplying your middle numbers and just work it out. It's that simple. So now let's just go straight to Chapter 8. And we'll just start out with number 1 on Chapter 8. And the problem is, what we want to identify is how many, 22 pounds equals how many kilograms. What I know is for every 2.2 pounds, that equals 1 kilogram. What I don't know is how many kilograms 22 pounds equals. So here's how I've set up my equation. I'm going to multiply my outers. So this is going to be 2.2x equals 1 times 22 is 22. So now I'm at 22x equals 2.2x equals 22. So now I just divide 2.2, so that can mark that out. Divide 2.2 on 2.2 on this side, and when I do the math, 22 divided by 2.2 equals 10. So 22 pounds equals 10 kilograms. Okay, I focused on what I knew, set up my equation that way, and then set up the other side equal to the other one. So I listed my pounds first and my kilograms second, and then just did my simple math. 2 times 2.2 times x, as well this side was set up, 2.2x, and then 1 times 22. Then you just take your 2.2 and divide it to both sides. It's going to cancel itself out on this one, and then 22 divided by 2.2 equaled 10. Here's another one. Here's number 2 from that worksheet. This question is, how many mLs equals 1 3/4 quart? What I know is 1 quart equals 1,000 mLs, or it takes 1,000 mLs to equal 1 quart. What I don't know is how many mLs is in 1 3/4 quart. So here's how I set up my equation, and now I'll do my math. So this one's going to end up being 1x equals 1,000 times 1 3/4. Again, I'm going to take this whole number and turn it into an improper fraction. So that's going to give me 7/4. And I know that 4 can go into 1,000. And it goes in there 250 times. So this is going to be 4 will go in there 250 times. And now I'll just multiply across. So 250 times 7 is 1,750. So that's my answer. 1 3/4 equals 1,750 mLs. I did that by setting my equation up. This is what we knew. This is what we wanted to answer. I multiplied my outer numbers and then my inner numbers. So this 1 times x equaled 1x. And then I took 1,000 and multiplied it by 1 3/4. First, I took that 1 3/4 and I changed it from a mixed number to an improper fraction, which was 7/4. I was able to reduce. I knew that 4 would go into 1,250 times. So that took that 4 to 1, that 1,000 into 250, and then I just multiplied straight across. So 250 times 7, it was 1,750, which was my answer. We'll do another one that's kind of similar to that one. This is number 12. This one is 6 3/4 or 6 4/5. 6 4/5 pounds equals how many grams? What I know is, and again, I switched it here just to kind of show you that it doesn't matter where you put what you know, as long as you make everything equal, it's fine. So I know that 2.2 pounds equals 1,000 grams. What I don't know is how many grams is in 6 4/5 pounds. So I'm going to multiply my outer numbers and my inner numbers. Again, notice that I put what was known on the right-hand side. That was fine because I made sure I listed my pounds first on both sides of the proportion and my grams second on each side. So I'm going to take 6 4/5 times 1,000. First, I'm going to take this whole number and turn it into an improper fraction, which is going to be 34/5 times 1,000. And this is going to be 2.2x. So with this one, I know that 5 can go into 1,000. Goes in there 200 times. So that's going to mark out the 5. This one's going to go 200. Now I'm going to multiply 200 by 34. So now I'm just multiplying straight across. So that gives me 6,800 equals 2.2x. Now I have to divide 2.2 from each side. So I know when I do it over here, it's going to cancel itself out. Over here, when I divide 6,800 by 2.2, it gives me 3090.9. And I'm just going to drop it off at the 10th. It doesn't really matter unless the book, unless the specifies where they want you to take the decimal point out to. I would just take it to the 10th or the 100th spot. So here I took it to the 10th. So my answer is 3090.9. So 6 4/5 pounds equals 3,090.9 grams. And I did that by setting up my equation. This is what I knew. This is what I wanted to solve. Math. I changed this. You're always going to have to take that whole number and turn it into an improper fraction. So when I did that, I had 34/5. I multiplied that by 1,000. I was able to reduce with my 5s, ultimately taking 34 times 200. And it gave me 6,800. Then I divided it by my 2.2, and I ended with 3,090.9 grams. Make sure you label it correctly. And then the last part of this chapter is converting Fahrenheit to Celsius and Celsius to Fahrenheit. Really, you just kind of need to memorize a couple of equations. And again, I have those written on my metric conversion sheet for you. So if you're going to convert Fahrenheit to Celsius like we are here, you're simply going to subtract 32 from the number and then divide by 1.8. So I'm going to take 99.6 minus 32, 99.6 minus 32, and that gives me 67.6. And then I'm going to divide that by 1.8. And that gives me 37.55555. So I can round that 5 up to 6. So it's going to give me 37.6 degrees Celsius. So when you take 99.6 degrees Fahrenheit and you convert it to a Celsius, all you're going to do is subtract 32 and then divide by 1.8, and we came up with 37.6 degrees Celsius. Let's do another one down here. We have 101.8 degrees Fahrenheit, and we want to convert that to Celsius. I'm just going to take 101.8. I'm going to subtract 32. And that gave me 69.8. And then I'm going to divide that number by 1.8. And that gives me 38.77777. So I'm just going to round that up to 8. And so 101.8 degrees Fahrenheit equals 38.8 degrees Celsius. Now let's take it the other way. Now let's go from Celsius to Fahrenheit. It's kind of the same numbers. You're just going to do it in reverse order. So with this one, on this one I have 40.4 degrees Celsius. I want to convert that to Fahrenheit. With this one, I'm first going to multiply 1.8 and then add 32. So here's 40.4 times 1.8. And that gives me 72.72. And now I'm just going to add 32. And that gives me 104.7 degrees Fahrenheit. So it's kind of the same numbers. It's just when you're going from Celsius to Fahrenheit, you're first going to multiply 1.8, and then you're going to add 32. Let's just do one more. This one we have 36.8 degrees Celsius, and we want to convert it to Fahrenheit. So I'm going to take 36.8, and I'm going to multiply 1.8. And that gives me 66.24. And now I'm going to add 32. And that gives me 98.2 degrees Fahrenheit. Okay? So again, kind of work on these problems. Go through your workbook and the textbook. Work the problems out. It has all the answers in the back. Make sure if you want some extra help, go to the Evolve website. You can punch in some numbers, and then it will tell you the right answer, the wrong answer, and then how you got to the correct answer. They'll show you exactly how to work the equation out. And then if you have any other further questions, just either call me, email me, or stop by my office, and I'd be more than happy to help you.